the IAF for inviting me today for this keynote lecture. Thank you also for the Norwegian Space Agency for the kind invite. It is really a pleasure to be here with you this beginning of afternoon, hopefully after a good lunch, to talk a little bit about operational products and services that we are bringing from the EU Space Program to users, to companies, in general to the economy, in order to make our planet to improve sustainability. Before I go into the details, let me just maybe take a step back and explain to you briefly what is the EU Space Program. The EU Space Program has many activities. We are doing many things, actually with many partners. And the Space Program brings all the activities of the European Union under one umbrella. So we have activities that have been there since a long time, such as the navigation activities. You certainly know Galileo, the European Global Navigation Positioning System, providing services since 2016, and today with more than 3.5 billion users worldwide. Here in Europe, we have the EGNOS service. EGNOS stands for, it's a regional service, it's an augmentation service, and it is actually directed to aviation, although we are having great utilization also in other areas with a direct impact in the climate domain. Then we have the Copernicus activities, the Union's Earth Observation Program, generating a lot of data from our world. It has been already mentioned many times in this conference in the last, this morning and yesterday. And then we have some new activities where the Union is starting to do work, secured communications, space situational awareness, more and more. Of course, it's important, and other areas such as fostering innovation, entrepreneurship, doing research, certification, standardization. So quite a lot going on in the Union in terms of space activities. There is also a new one to come. It's a little parenthesis that I do because recently, a little bit more than 2 months ago, there is a new regulation in place that mandates the creation of a new infrastructure, an infrastructure for resilient interconnectivity and security by satellite, the so-called IRIS². This is basically about secured connectivity by satellite. This is an activity that is now starting, and with these, in addition to other activities, the 3 pillars of the European Union's activities in space will be in the domains of navigation, telecommunications, and Earth observation. Now, obviously, at USPA, we do not do all of this alone. I think this is very important to highlight. We are the EU agency for the space program, but we work in partnership. And we work in very close partnership, certainly with the European Commission, with the stakeholders at European Union level. We work also very closely together with our trusted partners at the European Space Agency. And we work, of course, with industry, with academia, to bring this program and these activities to reality. And there, we do 3 main things. We exploit, we secure, we foster the market uptake. And it's actually on this second part that I will focus a little bit more, because this is where the relationship also with climate action actually comes. Maybe 2 words on exploitation. This is about service provision. So we are actually operating Galileo, and we are operating EGNOS. This is 24/7 operations, maintenance, improvement, etc., of these satellite-based capabilities. We are developing GovSatcom, and we are as well taking over space surveillance and tracking front desk as of July 2023, so later this year. As you can see, this part is very much service-oriented, so we are producing services to be used by users. The second element is that we secure. So security means actually 2 things. First means making sure that the systems, the satellites, are secure. So there is a lot of work on that, on the accreditation world, but also on the engineering world, making sure that they are protected. From a cyber point of view, of course, also physically protected. We have many assets on ground, and in space. And then we have the other element, which is how do we make sure that the services and the data that we generate can be used by the security communities. So basically, we are a provider of governmental services, so services that governments can use for security, in the security domain. And by the way, I will also focus on that in 5 minutes or so. Last point, in terms of utilization, so we are fostering the utilization. As you can imagine, this is a massive investment of the European Union, and therefore, I think it is fair, logical, that people want to see the return. And the return comes in form of adoption. So we are doing a lot of market development activities, communications, user uptake-related activities. This we do for Galileo and EGNOS. It's also, as Christian mentioned in the introduction, where our heritage comes from. We are now fostering as well the commercial use of Copernicus, something that we do, of course, in complementarity to all the other actors involved in Copernicus, the so-called interested entities, and also on GovSatcom. From a policy point of view, and I think this is very important, everything that we do is very tightly and closely aligned with the priorities of the European Union. And the priorities of the European Union are first, of course, the priorities of its 27 member states. This is clear. But many of those priorities are actually world priorities. And I would start with the first, on which I think space has a very important contribute, which is the implementation of the Green Deal. The Green Deal is the European Union's response to climate change, and there space can really support in a wide variety of areas. We are talking of things such as more efficient transport, precision agriculture, better management of energy, implementation of smart cities, etc., where space is crucial. In my very modest opinion, I think it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to attain the Green Deal objectives without space data, without space services. So space is playing a fundamental role on this. We have the element of digital. Of course, the digitalization, transition to the digital age. Here, in particular, the element of uninterrupted high-capacity connectivity is crucial. The resilience of our economic sector through innovation. Resilience through innovation means making use of the ideas for new businesses, for new approaches that come from the entire sector, but in particular from startups, entrepreneurs, and making sure that they make their way until becoming products. And obviously as well the priority of a stronger Europe, and a Europe that is based on one hand the strategic autonomy and non-dependence, but at the same level based on international collaboration, which is a very important pillar. Now, making the link between all these things we do in space and in the youth space program, with one of the particular political priorities of the Union, the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal, of course, set a very important targets from a policy point of view, among them having a climate-neutral continent by mid of the decade, and that translates into a set of objectives. So they are concrete objectives to be implemented. Clean energy supply, greener buildings, a greener food system, reduction of CO2 in air and waste, to make sure that all this transition to the green economy remains just, remains inclusive. Of course, the target of achieving climate neutrality, making our industry cleaner, making our transport more sustainable, restore the ecosystems that have already been damaged, boost climate spending, and this is very important because with this we are creating a new economic dimension which will be fundamental to achieve the objectives, and of course continue fostering and continue pushing the key research and innovation that is going on. So all these are the objectives of the Green Deal. And most of them are relevant for space, and space can contribute to most of them. I'll not go through all the details of the slide, but for example, you have there a couple of examples. I like very much the one that is related to precision, to agriculture. One of the key challenges we have it in Europe, we have it around the world, is how do we make our agriculture more efficient? And efficiency, not necessarily from the point of view of more production, but efficiency in the sense of more sustainable. So when we look at precision agriculture is enabled by space. It's enabled by space, it's enabled certainly by Earth observation data that allows us to monitor the use of water, the use of fertilizers, etc., when to harvest, when to plant, etc. But it's also enabled by precise satellite navigation, because we want to make sure that when working a land, any tractor limits the numbers of double passes. Each double pass is, on the one hand, money, but it's also more use of fertilizers or worst use of water. Here, for example, as one of the achievements, we are quite proud to see that right now in the Union, 97% of all tractors, medium-sized and large tractors that are sold in the European Union are equipped with EGNOS. You may remember or not, I've mentioned a few minutes ago that EGNOS was developed for aviation. Well, today the biggest user of EGNOS is actually the agricultural domain. And this is quite impressive, and this is very good, because this is making European agriculture more efficient, is also a key step for implementing the farm-to-fork policy that has been defined. Many other areas, many other examples. You have there some values in the screen, also, for example, in terms of clean energy, on the planning, operations of renewable energy, the distribution of energy. Sometimes a very, very innovative approaches, like, for example, use drones to monitor solar farms or wind production devices, etc., etc. Now, let's look also at the business side of it, because I think it is important to keep in mind that behind all these applications, there are businesses. We at USPA look at the business, at the market, with a certain regularity. More or less every second year, we publish something that we call the market report. I invite you to have a look at it. It's publicly available. And basically, that market report identifies 17 market segments all across our economy, where space is of benefit and where space adds value. You have very diverse things there, obviously in the transport domain, roads, rail, aviation, but you also have things such as drones, you have agriculture, forestry, you have energy management, etc., etc. And you have three sectors that I would like to touch in the next slides of my presentation, which are related to the climate action. So the climate services, biodiversity, ecosystems and natural capital, and environmental monitoring. Because these are market segments. These are areas where business can be done, where value can be created, and at the same time, they help us to attain the objectives, the climate neutrality objectives that are incorporated in the Green Deal. We start with climate services. So here we are looking mostly at the type of users, institutional users. Yes, already some NGOs also looking at this. Here you have a prediction of the current market value. It's a little bit above 300 million euro, with a growth rate across the next years of about 50%. By the way, the value data is normalized to 2021 prices, so there is a real market growth of about 50%. And here you see that companies, businesses may have the opportunity to do business, to create value, to make revenues out of this sector by selling data, by selling services. And in particular in this area, more important than the data, are actually the services. The demand of this market is actually determined by the public sector. So we in the public sector, at the European Union level, at the national government level, we have an obligation as well to foster the development of this market. Second area, biodiversity, ecosystems, and natural capital. Here we are talking of things such as ecosystem management, ecosystem accounting, monitoring of water ecosystems, coastal ecosystems, etc. So also here you see a growth in the market of about 50% forecasted for the next decade. Also here, there is an important driver from the public sector, but as well, of course, NGOs play a very important role. Last but not least, the point of environmental monitoring, so monitoring the environment. This market is quite interesting, and to be very honest, is one that is quite difficult to predict. Because here, yes, we have a lot of work being done by public actors, governments, agencies, etc. But we start seeing appearing a very important customer, which are big corporations. Big corporations, they want to be socially corporate socially responsible. And therefore, they are more and more corporations and big companies that want to measure their impact, their environmental impact, and want to act about that. This is why, second part, we have prepared yet another report. You can have a look at that. It's called EU Space for Green Transformation. And the objective of this report is a little bit different. Here, on this report, we want to look at how we, in the European Union, how EU space can help companies to transit to the green economy. What tools, what capabilities, what type of data and services can be used by commercial companies out there that want to be socially responsible, that want to have a sustainable policies. How can they use EU space data in order to do that? There are several examples listed there, and basically they split into two main areas. First, many companies want to monitor their impact on the environment. So what is their impact in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, consumption of energy, etc., etc. And it's true, EU space data can help them on that. Then there is the next step, which is how can companies then use EU space data to mitigate their impact, to reduce their environmental footprint. And as you see also there, we have made some estimations of what is the potential that can be achieved in this market. Some of the highlights of the report, you will see in there ways on how, and also, by the way, best practices on how space data, EU space data, is being used in environmental, social, and corporate governance performance of big companies, helping them achieve the green transformation. And this liaises back with many of the objectives of the Green Deal that I've mentioned before, but also with the one of a just and inclusive transition. Because we need to make sure that while we transit, at the same time, our economy continues to operate. Companies are finding this very, very important. And I can tell you also from personal discussions I've had with a number of them, companies want to be socially responsible and sustainable for many reasons. By the way, one of the reasons is to remain attractive employers, because young professionals, they want to work in sustainable companies. And I think this is very important, this is fundamental, that we have as well this drive coming from the general population. And as Christian mentioned in the introduction, we are also working with the United Nations, in particular with UNOSA. We have published a very interesting report 5 years ago, 2018, if I'm not mistaken. There we have looked at how space and the Sustainable Development Goals match, and to which of these goals can space actually help. So we have identified a few of them. I will not go into detail here because this is a little bit older data. I just want to use this to preview the new data that is coming. And the new data that is coming is a report that we are going to publish very, very soon. We are working on it for publication before the summer break, which is the link on how EU space can support the 8 billion world. And there, again, we are looking at things like precision farming, efficient transport, etc., etc., etc. So this one, there is no link because it still does not exist, but it will exist very soon, so stay tuned for this. All in all, yes, we have been using quite of some of our means to promote innovation, to promote entrepreneurship in many sectors, but also entrepreneurship and innovation that leads to development of innovative climate products, innovative climate applications. For that, we use our financing tools. So we have Horizon Europe as a very, very important financing tool. We are also using Cassini. Cassini is a program, initiative actually, to be more correct, set up by the European Commission to foster entrepreneurship. And there we are using Cassini with dedicated prizes in the domain of climate action, where we are seeing entrepreneurs, we are seeing startups coming up with ideas, with business cases that not only are good business cases, but also help us protect our environment. What's next? Well, a lot is next. This is just the beginning. There's a lot of work to be done as we move ahead. We are continuing with Horizon Europe. We are continuing with Cassini. There are calls coming up. We basically run these calls very regularly. We are also doing our user consultation platform. These are the opportunities when we exchange with all those 17 user segments I've mentioned before. And we are also having concrete consultations with the user segments in the sectors that I've mentioned, related environment, biodiversity, climate and forestry session, and we are working on capacity building. So this concludes my presentation, and of course, I would be very glad and happy to take any questions you may have. I think there will be a microphone circulating. Otherwise, I have here a slide in case there are any questions popping up. I have a good question coming up. It is for me, and then I think, Simonetta, you're going to get the same question afterwards. How is the relationship, interaction, cooperation with the European Space Agency working? It's an excellent question. It is working very well. I'm saying that, and Simonetta will say that, I think, just after that you will be speaking. It's working very well. I think it is indeed working very well. We have an agreement in place, all the paperwork that institutions need to work together, but I think there is, of course, much more than that. There is a clear role for the different actors and for the different institutions. I've mentioned a few of the things that we do. Now, these things that we do are not possible without the support and the work and the partnership with the European Space Agency. For example, look at Galileo. In Galileo, ESA is doing all the research and development work. They are building the satellite. They are building the ground segments. We are picking them up and we are operating. So in general, from my side, I can say the partnership is working very well, and I think, Simonetta, you will have the chance of picking up on that afterwards. Maybe any other question in the audience? Yeah? Yeah. Many things come up on slide, this is the difficulty.
Yes, so, actually, thanks to funding from the Commission, we started an initiative called Eurospace Sub-Academy. This is training the space workforce, but also from universities which are not space universities. So how can we support you, your objectives, and how can you support us in extending that to really the needs of Europe to prepare us for this space revolution, and also addressing these services for climate and Earth observation?
Thank you very much for the question. I mean, indeed, training and education is crucial, it's fundamental. For us, we know about the topic for a long time, but only recently we got the capacity of working also on that. So we have created a EU Space Academy. We are starting to work on that. Right now, it's very much directed still for entrepreneurship and startups. So we are helping entrepreneurs on things such as building their business case, connecting with venture capitalists, etc. So we are working on that. We are looking at extending that also to the security dimension, cybersecurity, etc., to allow exchanges, to allow knowledge sharing. And certainly is an area that we are looking to expand. So we are receptive to ideas and to proposals for collaboration. It's not something that is very old, but it's something that is very important. Maybe I'll take another slide unless there is a question in the room. How does Europe share and promote services to developing countries? It's a very important point. as I mentioned, collaboration and partnerships are crucial, and they are very key. And I think we are very happy to see that Galileo and GPS, for example, are interoperable, which basically means you can use both at the same time, but you can also use them independently if you want to or if you have to. We are very happy to see that also in the domain of Copernicus, there is a lot of international collaboration going on, data being provided, etc., etc. I can tell you that this is a topic of key attention for the European Commission. I'm not the right person to address the question directly, but I can tell you there is a lot of work being done. There is work being done in partnership with Africa. There is work being done in partnerships with South America, with partnerships in Asia. I will tell you an example that you may not know about because it's probably a little bit less known. We are partnering right now with the aviation community in Africa to see the possibility of creating in Africa an EGNOS-like system, so bringing the European capabilities, competencies, experiences also to Africa is one example, but there are many examples of collaboration. They appear, they disappear. Okay, there's a new one here. Following on from monitoring and footprint reduction, how can companies be actively encouraged to contribute to initiatives to drive broader climate action? It's a very good question. I will tell you my views on that. Certainly by rules and regulations, it's always a mean, and there are rules and regulations either made or in the making. For example, the so-called Euro 5, Euro 6, Euro 7 regulations for the automotive industry. But there are many rules and regulations that can create the impulse. Second, there is a very important role of the society. I've cited an example. Companies, big companies, in many fields, in the oil and gas, in the transport industry, are starting to think, how am I going to recruit my employees of the future? And how am I going to be an attractive employer? And in order to be an attractive employer, I need to be a sustainable company. So there is social pressure also associated to that. And then there is real economic benefit. And I think we need to make out of this also an economic benefit because the objective of creating profits and revenues will be an encouragement to companies. Certainly, coming back to the example I've cited, not to create too many examples, coming back to the example on agriculture, if by using satellite data, I can be at the same time more sustainable, because I use better the water I have, I use less fertilizers, for example. But at the same time, I can save in the time I use to work my land, then there is a conjunction of economic benefit together with sustainability benefits. So I think there are the three, I would mention the three elements: the regulatory part, the social pressure, and the economic attractiveness. Any other question? So I have a question. How do you involve citizens around your activities, especially about climate change? This is something, by the way, we don't do alone. And I think there is very important to coordinate the communication capabilities that we have. We have an excellent coordination with the European Space Agency, with the European Commission as well, because only by bringing many voices together, we can actually reach the general public. It was mentioned yesterday in another talk. I actually share with that. I think in general, in the space world, we still need to boost our communication capabilities in order to be able of not communicating to ourselves. We are all convinced, but we need to communicate to the general public. And I think there is fundamental to communicate about the benefits. And I think with this I will close because I have a big red thing coming up here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.